I felt that I need to do something for my country. When I joined the Shin Bet, my father told me, listen, this is a dark organization. Don't do it. Don't go there.
The goal was to kill Israelis. We had the right to make the other side feel our pain. I thought this is my chance to be a hero, a mujahid, fight for the sake of the nation. But Allah had other plans for me.
Recruiting is an art, a very difficult art. The main issue is to understand who is the person that's sitting in front of you. You need to understand his point of view, you need to understand his background, who is his family, what happened with him. You try to find their needs. And then when you know that, you know how to play with him. When you handle a source, you make him do things that he would never do, to your benefit. It's not yours, it's the government's benefit. And you do it by finding his weak points and use them. The first time I heard about the Green Prince was when I was in a training. It was a big secret, but we've been told that there is a new recruit. His nickname was the Green Prince. He was considered highly, highly dangerous. The first day handling him was the first day of the end of my career.
To collaborate with Israel is the most shameful thing you can do in my culture. If somebody raped his mother, that's very shameful, but if he collaborated with Israel, this is much more shameful. My father dedicated his entire life for the cause of Islam, thinking that the Islamic philosophy and ideology will solve the problem of humanity. I came to understand the importance of my father from day one. People used to travel from every part of the country to hear his Friday speech at Ramallah Mosque, to see this person with this status that is serving people, living a humble life, helping the poor, not taking advantage of his position. That taught me a lot. I was always very, very proud of him. I saw him as my highest example. If there was a God that I could see at that time and a higher authority in my life, it was my dad. My father wanted to take me with him everywhere he goes. He thought that this is how he's going to build a future version of him. As the oldest of 5 brothers and 3 sisters, many times I changed their diapers. I cooked for them. I took care of them, babysat them when my mom was gone and my father was in prison. I remember actually at least 2 of them, the youngest, used to call me Papa. And we established a strong relationship among us, which it was impossible to break. That kind of bond is impossible to break. Hamas was not just a movement to us, it was the family's business. It was our identity. It was everything. You know, my father is sacrificing and dedicating his life for that cause. He spent close to 16 years in Israeli prisons, maybe more. My father was among us. He was having dinner. Somebody knocked the door. They came, they took him from among us, and they promised to bring him back 5 minutes later. I went outside. I waited for hours, and they did not bring him back. He came back a year and a half later. He came home in the afternoon and was arrested again 6 hours later. I hated the Israeli soldiers and anybody who's put in an Israeli uniform because of that event. My father did not teach me how to hate, but I was 17 and I didn't know how not to feel that way. My cousin, Ibrahim, always mentioned that he had access to people with guns. And when I decided to buy guns, I asked for his help. In the middle of the mountain, they had the guns somewhere in a bag. I spray black pepper on them in case there was any dogs on a checkpoint. I put the guns in the doors of the car. On our way back, there was a checkpoint, and we were stopped. And they checked our IDs, and they searched the trunk of the car. It was a very scary and dangerous moment for me as a teenager still. Finally, we made it all the way to Ramallah through all the checkpoints. I had one thing in mind, that is revenge.
Because he was the son of Hassan Yosef, Musab was under surveillance of the Shin Bet. He was a very important target for us for two reasons. One, to make sure that he doesn't do anything wrong. Second, because we wanted to recruit people like him.
When I came to visit my mom, she told me the Israeli forces came to our house. She said, "Did you do anything wrong?" I told her I did nothing. Of course, I could not share with her what I did. After I left the house, I see special forces coming out of the bushes, pointing the guns right to my face. They pulled me out, and when I resisted, I started to receive hits from everybody. The second minute we start driving, I received this strong hit with the back of a rifle directly to my head. I hear people screaming, I hear people in pain, I hear very, very loud music. You just get panic attack to walk there. This is how scary it was.
Musab was 17 years old when he was arrested, and this was his first arrest. He never been in an interrogation, and not to know what's going on is worse than anything. The fear must be tremendous. Thinking what's going on, what am I going to say? Am I going to lie? Are they going to beat me? What is torture?
An officer came inside. He asked me, "Who gave you the order to buy the guns? Who gave you the guns?" I tried not to show that I was afraid, but deep in my heart, I was really terrified. He had a yellow smile on his face that told me that we know. Then he said, your father was here and he was a tough guy. Are you a tough guy? Do you want to be tough or you want to talk? And I was like, I have nothing to talk about. And he started to laugh. He told me, Musab, أهلا وسهلا في المسلخ. Welcome to the slaughterhouse. At the beginning, there was no sleeping, not at night, not during the day. You're sitting 24 hours forever. This is like the feeling, the notion that you had, that this is not gonna end. Half of my body was numb, and the other half was in tremendous amount of pain. Night after night after night. You start to lose your sense of reality. I start to forget how I look like. I could not think very well. I am missing my mother a lot. I'm thinking about her, you know, how she's handling the situation. Usually, when my father is arrested, I am outside, you know, side by side with her, helping her with the responsibilities and everything, sharing with her. And now here I am, you know, for the first time in a place that I hoped that she does not even think that I was there.
I would look at their psychological set and try to find their weak points, their needs. Maybe because I had a degree in psychology, it helped me a little bit. Many times I felt when I tried to recruit someone, I had a feeling when I'm going to recruit him.
After a few weeks, they brought me to the level to break me down. The officer came and sat down and he asked me, why do you get yourself in a trouble like this? You're still very young. If you did something, just why didn't you tell those guys? Are you trying to play, you know, the tough guy? You know, that's not gonna work for you. This is gonna just make it worse. He told me, those guys here believe that you did something big. And if you don't tell them the truth, they're gonna continue till they extract the information from you. I told him, listen, I bought guns, but we never used the guns. We are not connected to any military cell. I am sure that my father is very disappointed. I promise you, I'm not lying to you. He kind of believed what I said.
I had a killer instinct. I knew it, you know, I was so into it. I knew that it's going to happen.
He asked me, would you work for us? And I thought, is this guy like out of his mind or what? You know, how can you convince someone like me, you know, to work for Israel? Simply, you know, because of my father. I will never betray my father.
You know, he knows that when he says yes, maybe things will be more smooth, more easy. He was afraid.
I thought, what about if I tell them, yes, this way I can get out of prison? So I told him, yes. They said, if we release you, everybody is going to question how come we released you, and you will be exposed and possibly killed. You have to go to the Megiddo prison. There you just take care and get to know all the Hamas leaders in prison. And when you get out of prison, we will meet again, and we talk.
Who rules and who governs what happens inside the prison is not the Israeli government. It's not the Shin Bet. It's not the Israeli police. They are organized by sections. So when Musa comes, he gets to the Hamas section. There they have their own security force. When prisoners come from Shin Bet interrogations, they asked a very tricky question. Were you asked to work for Israel during your interrogation? If they say no, that's it. They are marked as a potential Israeli sources. Why? Because they know that usually we don't miss the opportunity to try and recruit someone during the interrogation.
I came to the Hamas people. I told them the Israeli intelligence offered me to work for them, and I said yes, and my plan is to take revenge. If I had an opportunity to kill my handler, to kill any Israeli, I wouldn't hesitate a second. They said, is that it? And I said, this is it. I said, what's your network? Did they connect you with somebody inside prison? And I was like, no, they did not connect me with anybody. They come back with the same question. What's your network? I said, no, there is no network. What is the plan? You just told them, okay, I work with you, and they did not give you any mission? I said, no. I told them the truth, and the truth did not make any sense to them.
Yes, he is the son of Hassan Youssef and the owner Hassan Youssef. But then he's alone in prison and things can happen. His uncle was there. Actually, his uncle was torturing people that agreed to work for Israel when they arrived to prison, because inside prison, they don't want anybody to spy on them. And he's afraid.
I remember one of the times the Hamas security guys would come and say, everybody evacuate this tent. Now, we leave our stuff, we leave whatever we're doing, they close the tent, nobody can see what's going on, and they turn on all the TVs of the section very loud, and they ask some of the guys to start singing so the soldiers outside don't hear the prisoner screaming. Now, the prisoner was screaming like crazy inside, and we did not know what was happening with him. People that we just get to know, after a couple of days, where are they? Why don't we see them anymore? They're gone. They're just held in that corner, being tortured, their bodies being burned. The Hamas guys put needles under their fingernails, burned plastic on their bodies. There was no limit. Sometimes without evidence, they tortured people to death. We're talking about not one prisoner or two, we're talking about hundreds. I was looking at that picture and I was thinking, this is my father's project. When we sit at home like a family, and my father used to share with us about his goals, he would say, I work for Allah. Me that he could get killed for the sake of Hamas, and please to accept. He was saying, please to understand, if anything happens to me, take care of each other, take care of your mom. And I had to hear that again and again and again. I had to witness the Israeli soldiers pulling him from among us and taking him, humiliating him, and putting him in prison for a long time. For what? For the sake of Hamas. Now, here I am in prison and I see Hamas. And that was really shocking. My father wanted from us to be connected always to the land and olive trees, since olive trees are very important in the Palestinian culture. At the age of 5, he asked me to go with our neighbors to see how people harvest olives and take care of their land. I remember very well, the atmosphere was really amazing, and the family that my father trusted with asked their son to take me home before the dark. On the way home, this guy started to act in a weird way, trying to touch me, and I knew that he had evil desires. I ran for my life, I ran to protect myself. He was much bigger, he was much stronger, and I could not resist anymore. What happened was absolutely brutal and dark. When I got back home, my mom was waiting, and I could not tell her a word about what happened. For some reason, I was ashamed. I never shared that with anybody, because if that news came out, I would have a problem at school, I would have a problem, in the future, and I would be isolated, because in my society, the more painful thing than being raped is to have the reputation of being raped. It's very hard to face this monster called the shame. After I was released from prison, I was still under huge shock. At that time, my father was in Israeli prison. Most of my friends at school, they were already in their first and second year at university, and I was not graduated. I was on my own, and I did not know who to trust anymore. So now I don't think about revenge anymore, because I don't know what I'm fighting for. A couple of weeks after I was released, I received a phone call from the same person who recruited me. He told me, listen, I know that you have many questions. We cannot talk over the phone. I would like if we can have a cup of coffee and discuss these things. I was curious. I wanted to know what was going on.
It crossed my mind that when I bring someone to the meeting, basically, I'm destroying his life. But what was important is to bring this guy. To recruit the son of Sheikh Hassan Yosef was a very, very important issue. At the beginning, it was a secret even inside the Shin Bet. Even the guards that brought him to the meeting didn't know who he was.
I did not know how far the agency is going to take the promise that I gave them. I was afraid that if he said yes, maybe this is on a camera somewhere, they could expose that thing to public, to embarrass my family. Your son gave his word to work for the enemies. This is somehow shameful.
When you bring the source to the first meeting, he's not with you. You need to bring a Palestinian guy and make him betray his own people. For most Palestinians, Shin Bet handler is the devil himself. And he expects that the devil will react like a devil.
I found myself in a room with closed windows. Gunen came into the room. I asked him, why didn't you rescue your people? Why the people who worked for you were tortured, they were in pain, and nobody did anything to come rescue them. He said, and who told you that those people were working for us from the first place? I told him, what do you mean? He said, those guys have no relationship with us at all. He said, how Hamas got to know those people? Bringing somebody and asking about a network? I said, yes. Let me ask you this question. What is your network? I told him, I have no network. You did not connect me with anybody. He said, who told you that we connect people with anybody? That's not how intelligence works. You are responsible for yourself, and you only know about yourself. No one else knows about you, and you're supposed not to know about anyone else, and that's it.
And suddenly, everything changes.
Nobody had a gun in my head telling me, we're gonna shoot you if you don't work for us. Nobody came to me with secret files and told me we're gonna send you to jail or expose you. It was against everything that we learned about the Israeli intelligence. Maybe the Shin Bet did not realize what was happening in my mind at that point, and they did not intend to tell me anything to change my mind. But for me, I start to realize that we are living a lie. And people are dying because of this lie.
That's it. I know that he's hooked.
And this is why, I continued, because I needed to answer those questions for my soul.
If you want a good source, he needs to be with you, not against you. And you need to be with him and not against him.
From the early beginning, the Israeli intelligence made it very clear to me that you have to finish your high school that you did not finish. Honor your parents. Take care of your brothers and sisters. Take care of your school. Actually, they were just like my father.
When he gets in education, he meets people. He becomes more important in his community. He becomes more important for me.
I was saying, how can I guarantee that you just don't use me and one day either kill me or send somebody to kill me, or maybe I get killed because of this? Like, why would I continue with you guys? He told me, listen, how old is your grandfather's Roman olive trees? I told him some of these trees are hundreds of years old. To us, you are like olive tree. Of course, we need to water you, we need to build you up, we need to give you enough support to be able at some point to give fruit.
You also give him the notion that he's important for you, and you're not just using him. In Musab's case, it helped us use him. For the Shin Bet, it was like, a real achievement in the war against Hamas. It's like recruiting the son of the Israeli Prime Minister. This is the way we looked at it. For me as a handler, my sources are somehow like toys. You know, this is a big game, and I'm a player. I play in the intelligence field, but it's a game. We didn't know much about Hamas at that time. Recruiting someone so close to Hamas. And, you know, Musab was not a Hamas member. He was not a Hamas member. He was his father's son. So we needed to find a way to make him bring the information.
Few months after I agreed to work for the agency, my father's release from prison was arranged. My father needed someone to be his assistant, and he could not find better person than his oldest son, the closest to him that he can trust.
Hassan Youssef was always in the middle of things. He got money and he spread the money in order to let Hamas do what they do. Some of it was civil work and some of it wasn't. Now people came to meet Hassan Youssef. They always met Musa before they met Hassan Youssef. He was the gatekeeper. All of Hassan Youssef's phone calls were answered by Musab. Someone from Gaza, someone from Nablus, someone from Syria called Hassan Youssef. He will talk first with the Musab and then with Hassan Youssef if Musab decides that it's important enough. And when he decided it, we decided it.
My dad had no clue what I was doing. He wanted to take me with him everywhere he goes. Sometimes we would go into an office and we have, let's say, a coffee table. We took a picture of that coffee table. The artists of the agency would create the exact same table. And I go just inside and change tables. So now the person would come next day and he wouldn't know the difference that we gave him a brand new table that was a table that could listen.
The people that take decisions are not necessarily the people you see on TV. Musab helped us understand and uncover part of this system.
The experience was amazing. I got a chance to learn things and to see things that the average person can't see.
He loved it. He was addicted to the action. So for me as a handler, I used it. You need to teach him how to ask questions, how not to ask questions. Otherwise, he will be exposed after a week, and he will be dead, or I will be dead after 2 weeks.
When I was asked to go do something, the first command I had was, don't act like Abu Arab, or don't act like James Bond. The best way just to act like yourself. When I was working out a lot, and started to get buff, the agency asked me to reduce that a little because it was getting lots of attention.
We tried hard to convince Musab to become a Hamas member. We told him to go to the mosque, to pray, to grow his beard. He wouldn't listen. In the beginning, it was really frustrating because you have a great source. You want to push him to go deeper and deeper into Hamas. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
There were red lines that I had that I could not cross. It was not Hamas moral code anymore. It was not the Israeli intelligence moral code. It was my own moral code that I developed for myself within my limited knowledge at that time.
We called him the Green Prince. Fast, he understood that this is his secret name in the Shin Bet, and he acted as a prince. He wouldn't take anything humiliating from anybody.
I realized my choices that I'm making. And I knew at some point the agency could not force me to continue working.
Information is power. He brought the information, he had the power in his hands. And I think that he knew from the beginning what kind of tool he has in his hands, and he used it.
They needed someone like me. This is a big achievement. And I knew, through his eyes, that was the biggest recruitment that he had so far. He needed that, so I played the game.
לפני זמן קצר במרכז ירושלים.
Yasser Arafat met with my father to discuss the details of the Intifada and its activities. He did not want to look like he's asking people to come down to the streets. He wanted to stay away from that and have someone to do the dirty job for him. I wanted my father to be careful. But there was no way to talk to him directly about anything.
The Green Prince called us and informed us that Arafat was talking to Hassan Youssef and told him, be prepared. We are going, to blow up everything. The Shin Bet and Israel couldn't handle this information at that time. Our hope was in Arafat.
لنقاوم هذا الاحتلال لنطارد هذا الاحتلال في كل موقع في كل شبر وهذه الارض باذن الله حتى ينخر.
During that time, I was in charge of all the operations that happened in Ramallah. It was a big responsibility. I hardly slept. I don't know how my wife coped with this. I would come very late. After a few days, I wasn't at home. And all night, I get all kinds of phone calls. They never come and tell you, now we are in February. Next December, someone is going to make an attack. No, you don't have this privilege. It's always like in 2 hours, 1 hour, in half an hour, and you start to war. Every day we had new bombing, sometimes twice a day. We would wake up in the morning thinking, what's going to happen today?
I realized that cowards, with the name of courage, are leading children and women, an entire nation, to death.
It was like a flood that you can't stop. 10, 20 Israelis are killed because of you, because you didn't prevent the killing. Sometimes I felt I need to take my gun and go shoot people in Ramallah. It was nonsense, it wasn't something I would ever do. But the level of frustration was so high, and the anger. And I try to remind myself, this is what they're doing. You can't go and shoot innocent people. And yet I felt like, sometimes I need to do it.
I did not have a problem of stopping a suicide bomber. Actually, I did not have a problem of cracking down the entire Hamas security and military wing at that time. This is how much I was frustrated, because when things went out of control, there was still a responsibility towards every individual of that society. People were afraid to stand and say no to suicide bombs.
كتائب الشهيد عز الدين القسام قبل لحظات أن الشهيد الذي قام بالعملية الاستشهادية فينا ثاني اليوم هو أحد أبناء هذه الحركة هو الشهيد السابع من سلسلة الشهداء العشرة.
This is very hard to tell what was on his heart. At least in his public appearance, he did support the suicide bomber. But on a personal level, I'm not sure.
We got an order from the government. You need to find some terrorists and assassinate them. Hassan Youssef was a great target.
I was afraid that they're gonna come to ask me something that I cannot do. And at that point, I'm gonna say no to that. I wrote him a letter not handwritten, and I pretended that I was someone else, and I did not leave even any clue that could lead to me. I wanna tell you that you are a target, and you can get killed anytime. Stay away from Hamas activities, especially its military wing. And you need to go to a hide, and don't trust your bodyguards. The next day, he immediately fired his bodyguards, and he told me, I want to go into a safe house. I told him, why? And he said, there is no specific reason, but I feel that this is the time to really go to a hide. When he gave me his secrets, his locations, everything, and I gave all that information, to the Israeli intelligence, that was, by all means, in his world, was betrayal. Now, in my world, it was a different story. In my world, it was responsibility. In my world was saving his life. In my world was saving many other people's lives.
You can't assassinate his father and keep him as a source. So the plan was to isolate him, make the Green Prince, Musab, his son, the only connection between him and the outside the world, in order to get to other wanted people. Musab had great connections with the Hamas leadership in Damascus, in Gaza, of course in the West Bank. When Hassan Youssef sends information and sends his point of view through the Green Prince to others and get a response, everything is monitored by Shin Bet. It was something very unique. When he needs to give an answer to Khalid Mashal, the head of the Hamas movement, and we don't like the answer, we can manipulate his answer in a way, we can create a new reality.
All-out war between Israel and Hamas. The Israeli military launched another attack today. It was the sixth one in 2 weeks, targeting Hamas leaders and their lieutenants. Helicopters and missiles doing what Israel says the Palestinian Authority will not. For its part, though, the Palestinian Authority says that continuing missile attacks make that job, reining in the militants, even harder to do.
At some point, my father called me and he said, finally, the PA agreed to release the members of the movement: Ibrahim Hamid, Mohammed Jamal Natshe, Saleh Talahme, Sayyid Sheikh Qasim. Those guys were the spine of the Hamas military wing, and all of them were masterminds behind many suicide bombing attacks. And it happened that I took those people with my car from the Palestinian Authority prison to the safe house.
This piece of information you get once in a lifetime. Now, using this information means you're going to kill Mossad, because they will check it, they will understand fast that Mossad gave the information, and the game is over. We needed to make a choice. We had a chopper in the air, and I remember an argument, a very emotional argument at that time. I remember the manager of special operations of Shin Bet screaming, saying, shoot. I felt that I'm tempted to do it, because the mission is so important. You are so focused in what you do, you put everything aside. And we didn't do it.
The explosion in the Israeli coastal town of Hadera between Tel Aviv and Haifa in northern Israel. According to hospital sources in the town, 2 people have been killed. As many as 25 people have been injured. Israel holds the Palestinian Authority responsible because the authority freed Hamas and Islamic Jihad activists.
I remember that when Musab heard the news, he was really sad. It struck me that he's so sad. He was ashamed of what happened. It seemed like he's disappointed that he couldn't help in this case. It was obvious that this is a Hamas attack. And this was maybe the time I understood that, he's not just a source. He was there for us all the time. You don't talk about the fact that actually he's a traitor. This is like infection. If you put the mirror in his face, would finish everything.
5 years ago, you were buying guns and trying to kill people that you are fighting now, risking your life to save their lives. That was like a crazy transformation. In my heart, I understand the process. I understand why I came to these conclusions. While doing that, I kept in mind where I'm coming from, and everything in my surroundings reminds me of that. But that change was very, very radical, to the level that you start to feel that you're living a dream.
he was considered highly, highly dangerous. What happened in the beginning, the fact that he thought about killing his handler, was something that nothing could clean from his record, nothing. Doubt is the most important tool for a handler. If you don't doubt, you will have, a failure. You have to doubt. Now, for me as a handler, soon it was very hard to doubt. And this is a big danger for a handler when he forgets that the source is not a friend, but he's a potential enemy.
They exaggerated, with how they handled me. They really exaggerated. Like, imagine just having dozens of agents just to bring you for a meeting, while you could just walk into the meeting by yourself. I remember once there was a song playing in the car, and one of the officers turned it off, and I was like, "Oh man, you just killed it." And I did this with my finger, and he says like, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "Do what?" It's like, "Do this with your finger." I was like, I was expressing that, he killed the song. And he was like, "Don't do this again." And we start a big, big argument. I'm working with people who does not appreciate me somehow, or does not respect me, or does not trust me. I was not fooled by the Israelis' nice attitude. Actually, the attitude was not nice. The attitude was rough. They were always suspicious. They were always playing that they know everything, but they did not know everything. And this kind of things, it was a big discouragement. You're risking your life. You're doing the impossible. You're crossing all the lines. You're somehow betraying your family and culture. And here you are, and they still don't trust you.
I felt that in order to keep him as a source, I need to do something. I met Musab without any bodyguards, against the protocol. It was like something you don't do.
I know that Gonen was breaking the law of the agency, and I knew that he could get in lots of trouble doing that. Now, to me, it was very important when he did that. This meant to me that this man trusts me, and that was very, very important for me to know, because I trusted him, and I wanted to make sure that he can trust me too, because the type of job that we were doing together was very, very dangerous, and that was needed at that time.
From that point and on, he was with me 150%. The Green Prince called me and told me that the 5 suicide bombers came and asked for his help. We knew that we can easily stop them, but we also knew that this will put Musab in a very difficult situation.
My brother's telling me 2 strangers are outside. They said we supposed to carry an operation soon, and our man was arrested by Israel a few days ago, and it's not safe for us to stay in the same house, and we don't have money, and we need someone to give us a safe house. I remember I just got my salary from the agency, and I told them, take the money, go to this address, and tell the guy that I sent you, and give him the money, and he will give you a safe place to stay, and wait for me there. Don't go anywhere.
Killing them is the easiest solution, because if you kill them, first of all, you prevent the attack, and secondly, that person cannot expose your source. But for him, it was very hard to be part of assassination.
If I was fighting to stop killing of human beings on the Israeli side, I had to keep that level of integrity. Even I knew that those people were extremely dangerous.
I captured them, but we knew that soon or later they will bring up his name as someone that helped them. And this is a situation where you can't just ignore it. Because if you ignore it, you expose him. So we arranged a huge scene where special forces came to Bitunia, where Musab lived, trying to capture him, and he fled away only seconds before they arrived. I needed to coordinate it in a way that it's realistic, but not dangerous for him, because they thought, they could shoot him.
They evacuated my family. Now Gunan was there interrogating my mom, asking her, where is Musab? And she says he escaped. And Gunan was pretending all the time that no way, we know that he's in the house. And if he does not surrender right now, we're gonna kill him. And my mother knew that I was not in the house. And she was like, okay, you're not going to find him. And when they start shooting and finally launch a missile in our living room and burn half of the house, my mother saw how serious the IDF was about capturing me. To the level when I came next day, she told me, go underground, don't go anywhere, don't come back ever.
This was, only a game in order to show everybody that he's a wanted terrorist and we try to catch him.
Finally, everybody in the city believed that I was wanted by Israel. And this way, I got a chance. Since I became a wanted person, I got a chance to hang out with other wanted Hamas members that we have been looking for them for years.
קיווינו מאוד לערב פסח שקט, אבל זה לא מה שקורה בשטח. אנחנו במבזק מיוחד בעקבות פיצוץ שהיה לפני כמה דקות סמוך למלון פארק.
Suicide bomber blew himself up in the hotel, killing more than 15 people. I understood at that point that this is the game is going to change.
We decided that we are going to take all the necessary measures to act and destroy the infrastructure of every terror element that exists.
The Israeli army started to enter cities in the West Bank. The Green Prince was a key player in many operations, and one of the operations was to reveal where the Hamas leaders are hiding. Our goal was to try and get as much terrorists as we can, as much extremists as we can. So we had maybe 24 hours before everybody would run away.
The Israeli politicians did not know about my involvement with the Israeli intelligence. And all they knew that Hassan Youssef is a terrorist. And there was pressure to assassinate all top Hamas leaders who were involved in the movement that caused the death of hundreds of Israeli citizens. And my father was the top Hamas leader in the West Bank, where most of suicide bombing attacks came from.
Musab was terrified. He knew that it's a matter of time that his father would get into the list. Musab called us, let's arrest my father. And then I'll know that my father is in prison, nothing happens to him.
I was carrying very huge responsibility. I knew what I did was not shameful, and what I did was very, very important and was necessity. There is not lots of money. You're not paid as people think. You're paid millions, not even thousands. You are in a risking everything, and there is no celebration. I promise you. We never opened a bottle of champagne because we saved dozens of lives. The prize was a different kind of prize.
We told him, you can't just, finish with the Second Intifada, finish with the defense shield, and go back to your life. It's, it's something that won't happen. Everybody expects you to be arrested. We have to do it. And he needed to agree, and he eventually agreed to go and spend time in prison, although he did nothing wrong. He was working for us, but this was the only way to keep him alive.
We were in the Muscovia, where I was tortured the first time. My father was there, and they made it look like interrogations. Once the door is closed, Gunan would come in, and we just continue our work. And when I come back to the cell, I'm totally exhausted from working all day long. So my father and the other cell prisoners would think that, you know, I just had a rough day interrogation, you know. I'm looking at my father, just living his reality, not knowing what's really happening. In a perfect world, I wanted him to know everything. But to give him that kind of information, it's not going to make sense to him. And that's why we lived in two different worlds.
I have a feeling Hassan Youssef knew Musab is working for us. Like a husband, that his wife is cheating on him. And all the signs are written on the wall, but he doesn't want to look at it. Hassan Youssef had all the signs on the wall.
Palestinians now only waking up to the news that Yasser Arafat has died. It came at 5:30 in the morning here in Ramallah. We are now...
When Arafat died, we didn't really know what's going to happen afterwards. We were worried about the possibility that Hamas is going to take over Ramallah. So again, we did what we know to do. We started to gather information.
When I got out of prison, my father was released as well. Hamas and other Palestinian factions were preparing for the elections. The Hamas strategy was to bring their military wing members down to the street to show power. It saddened him to see the movement is getting out of his control, and young military guys taking over, just sending everybody to destruction. He was very conflicted. He did not have anybody to talk about his frustration. I was the only person there that could listen to him and understand what he was saying. We had a group of foreigners come in, and I invited them to come meet with my father. I told them, here's the situation. Would you please help him see what you see from the outside? And he met with lots of secularists who shared with him alternative ways of fighting occupation without causing bloodshed. And somehow he was comfortable with that approach, which, you know, practically brought him to the level to think of having a truce with Israel. Now, when he started to share what he understands with the Hamas leaderships in Gaza Strip, they didn't know where he was coming from. Israeli Shin Bet never came to me and said, hey, how about you convince your father to hold the truce? Actually, they did not like that very much. The Israeli intelligence wanted me to act like somebody who's zealous, somebody who's angry at Israel, somebody who does not believe in peace, somebody who's a terrorist. Because that was the goal, to infiltrate terrorist organizations by playing that you are a terrorist. Now, when I did the opposite of that, to convince my father that a truce with Israel will save human lives, and my father was convinced, for the individual who works within the agency, that was, wow, that's great. But for the mind of the agency, that was not good. That was not bravo. That was like, stop what you're doing and focus, you know, on our game.
Musab has his own views, and he never agreed, you know, just to get orders without thinking and without processing. And he didn't act like a very religious guy. And this was another concern, because we were afraid all the time that someone will suspect him, not because what he does for Israel, but because the way he acts.
أن أكثر من 19 قتيلا وعشرات الجرحى من بينهم عدد من الأطفال هم حصيلة الانفجار الذي حدث عصر اليوم خلال عرض عسكري نظمته حركة حماس. الأنباء حتى الآن تتضارب عن سبب الانفجار واستهدافاته.
My father got the word from Gaza saying that Israel hit us with a missile. He was invited to Al Jazeera to comment. He was, of course, furious. He was very disappointed because at that time he worked very hard to establish a hudna, a truce with Israel. Then told me we didn't do it. So I asked the guys at Al Jazeera, do you have a filming of the explosion? I'm looking at the video again and again and again, and always the explosion came from under, and the smoke was completely white, which is the material that Hamas used to build their homemade missiles. There was a vehicle that had in it tons of missiles and explosives. Something went wrong with the car that simply exploded and killed all these civilians who were around them. I brought my father to the control room and I showed him how the explosion happened. It was obvious and clear, but he simply ignored it.
أليس من حقنا أن نرد؟ أليس من حق الضحية أن ترد على ظلم الجلاد وإجرام وإرهاب شارع؟
That started a new war.
Suddenly you had the missiles, which we never had before. The world changed and it became 10 times more violent.
Part of the reaction was to arrest all top Hamas leaders. I received a phone call from the Shin Bet office saying your father will be arrested. And I was like, well, if this is the case, this is the case. Then when I received the second part of the order, which was, and you are going too, I was like, that's impossible. I'm not going to jail again.
Our part was to calm him down, to explain, to resonate and explain why we do it. And it became a very hard mission to do.
I remember I started even to cry, because I could not even understand or absorb the whole situation. I went back home afterwards just to have the last dinner, with my mom and my dad. My dad was in the kitchen cooking, and he asked me, why don't you come give me a hand? Because usually when he's cooking, I like to help him. And usually, there's a competition who's got like the best recipe and all that. And, it's like he wanted just to play the same game, not knowing what's waiting for him. So I thought to myself, let's just forget what's going to happen in a few hours. And we got in the kitchen, we start cooking, chopping vegetables and preparing food for everybody. Actually, I thought that's like a good opportunity just to do something good for the family before this disaster happens. When he was ready for bed, I just hugged him and told him, have a good night, without, showing anything. I went upstairs to my room and I got myself ready for the moment. My father came up to me. He said, we have to go. I told him, what's going on? He said, we are arrested and they're asking for you too. So put some warm clothes and come with me.
A new era begins in the Middle East with a sweeping victory by Hamas in the Palestinian territories.
The militant group will be running things now, and world capitals are struggling to adjust to that reality.
We're covering all of the angles, trying to frame the reports from Ramallah, Jerusalem, and
I came to the realization that we were fighting a ghost, and I was tired already at that time, and I needed a break.
Mossad spent more than 6 months in prison. He came back really exhausted. Mentally, he was exhausted. He told me, it's very hard for me to keep working with you. He was lying to his family. He was lying to his father. He needed to lie to the Palestinian Authority, to Hamas. He needed to hide things from the Shin Bet about himself. And every given second, he needed to lie to someone. He didn't live his life. He was living life where he needs all the time to process lies.
How can you establish a life or a family or a relationship of any kind based on a false identity that you know that this identity at some point Either it gets exposed or it gets killed.
The Shin Bet expected me to handle the situation and convince him to go on. You start, to lie to yourself and to him and say, well, but let's keep another month and see what's happening. Maybe you'll feel better and let me help you. Do you need something? You take him maybe somewhere, you buy him a present. You try to keep it working. Though you know that as a person, you need to let him go. I saw Mossab outside of Shin Bet facilities, and I let him a few times to take a break, to go into Israel, to rest a little bit for one day. I rented a car for him. I found a hotel that he can rest in, and then go back. This was a very important step to make him understand how important he is for me as a person. For the Shin Bet, it's very dramatic because this is a violation of the protocol, a very bad one. But I thought that they will understand that my intentions were clean and pure. And they looked at it differently. I was told again and again, the Shin Bet is a family. It's your family. I never felt that this is my job. It was going to the family. And then suddenly the family is against me. They said I did not work by the rule or by the Shin Bet way, and they took me to court and dismissed me from my duty.
All he said was goodbye, and I was like, gosh, this is really bad news. All the doubt, the suspicion that I had with the agency, I overcame only through the trust that I could establish with Gonan and the personal relationship that I built with him. So for me, he was really a gift from heaven to be just there to take care of me. And when he was like, that's it, I'm going somewhere else, I knew that I am not going to see him again.
He got a new handler, and he didn't like this handler at all. They had fights. This guy tried, to teach Mossab everything from the beginning. They decided to put him on a polygraph test to show him who is in charge.
It was impossible for someone like me to pass the test. When they asked me, did you plan attacks against the state of Israel? This is what we did on a daily basis. That was my job, to pretend that we are planning attacks. With that said, how can you say yes or no? And now here I am answering a machine, and the guy from behind the desk that I never met before, and trying to prove to him something that I could not prove. You trusted me with the lives of your troops, with your own lives, with the secrets of the agency, big secrets. And now you're coming back to the first square for your old suspicion and old doubt. That broke bones between me and the agency. And at that moment, that was a final decision for me. That was the last time I want to work for the agency or do anything for it. They tried by temptation, giving me an offer to open a company to help me achieve, things that people dream about and they don't get. They could not threaten me because they knew that I knew the game. And simply, I kept insisting for a few months that I have to leave. Finally, they agreed with two conditions. I have to bring a solid cover how I left. It was simply an operation for my jaw, and I had to go to doctors and bring these papers. The second condition was that I come back and work for the Shin Bet. I take just a long vacation. They preferred that I go to Europe. They did not want me to go to the United States of America. Now, Spain and Europe and all that, Israel simply could put me in a case and send me back to the Palestinian territories if they had to. But in America, it was a different story. The American government in general don't tolerate any Israeli activity on the American soil without cooperation with the American intelligence. My mom knew that there was a possibility that's gonna take a few years before I come back. She told me, you do the surgery, if you get a chance to finish your master's in the United States, just do it. You know, I wish you luck. And she was just sad that I was leaving, but she knew how much I suffered, you know, for the family and all over the years. And she wanted me also to find my life. So she was kinda finally okay with that. And we hugged and we said goodbye. To go to a new culture, to have to build everything from scratch, that was the most difficult thing for any human being. I was conflicted with my own identity. I was invited to a Bible study. I started to build a new relationship with a new community that had a totally different faith. It was fun. It was a peaceful environment. And to go to this kind of community and to be loved unconditionally was very comforting and was very important to me. It filled a very important gap in my life. I applied for political asylum in the first few months in secret, and it was rejected by the Department of Homeland Security. The FBI was told by the Israeli intelligence that the son of a top Hamas leader is hanging out in California, and we don't know exactly what he's doing there. Thinking that the FBI is going to just put me on an airplane and send me back. There was always a problem with how can I convince those people that I am not involved in terrorism. I shared the story with the core group in the church. And I was expecting an immediate support, but to look at people's faces and see fear and see doubt, that's something that I was not expecting. They were not only not believing, they were also scared of the fact that I was there. Nobody would believe my story. No one. I was without anything. I was without a shelter. I became without a job, jobless. I became without a community. I became completely alone. And my intention was to go public. I knew the moment I am gonna say that I worked for the Israeli intelligence, first of all, I am done. I have no future. I'm gonna become from a prince to a traitor immediately. Nobody's going to sympathize with me. I'm going to bring lots of shame to my mother, to my father. It was the shame, that I had to face, as a human being. Since I was a child, I was raped. I could not tell my parents. Why? So that was like finally a chance or an opportunity to fight against this dangerous enemy, the force of shame. My father had access to a cell phone that was smuggled to prison at that time. So I called him and I told him, listen, I'm writing a book. The book is going to come out and I'm telling the world about my relationship with the Israeli intelligence. I am not who you think I am. I worked for Israel for 10 years. I put you myself in prison to protect you. And you are not assassinated today because of this arrangement. He told me, listen, come back and I will protect you. Don't worry about anybody. I told him I am not coming back. And I asked him actually in that conversation to disown me because I knew the pressure of the society. And he told me this is not an option while he was grieving. He was in loss of pain, he was under shock. He told me, "You are my son and you will continue to be my son. No one can take that away."
Putting his own life in danger by going public with his story in one remarkable book called Son of Hamas, giving a never-before-seen
Mossab Hassan Youssef says that he turned against Hamas because he believes
as Israel's most valuable spy inside Hamas for over a decade. Now, still in the young man who saw bad things happening and decided to take a stand.
Your own father has written from prison, where he still is, a statement. I, Sheikh Hassan Youssef, Dawood Dar Khalil, and my entire family, my wife, sons and daughters, declare that we fully, inclusively and exhaustively denounce our eldest son, Musa. He said that you were a collaborator, collaborating with the enemy. He said that you're betraying the Palestinians, betraying Islam. How do you respond to that?
I knew that I was really hurting people I love and people who loved me very much. When I thought about my brothers and sisters, those are like were my children. They never had a problem without calling me. And I've always found a solution. And that was the first time when my brother called me asking for a solution. But unfortunately, I was the problem. And I could not provide a solution for the first time. I felt hopeless. I felt that I stabbed them in the back. Actually, I felt like I took each one of them and I put them in the altar and slaughtered them, all of them. The law was very clear with the deportation case. You were affiliated at some point of your life with Hamas organization. You bought guns and with the intention of killing people. So that's enough. It doesn't matter what you did afterwards. The law says if you had that kind of history, you don't qualify to become American citizen.
But how much danger is Youssef really in if he's deported?
Al-Qaeda immediately issued a death sentence for him. Hamas leaders in
One
Gaza
day,
and the West
I
Bank
see
have also
a big picture of the Green Prince, page 1 in our newspaper. I felt my heart, beating hard, and you need to understand, the Green Prince was one of the most sensitive secrets of the Shin Bet. The option to have him on the front page of the newspaper, something I couldn't even consider. I was shocked. I started to think, how come he's in the United States? What's going on? I read that he left the West Bank, he converted to Christianity, and that he lives in the United States, homeless. He was in a real trouble, and I knew it. I really felt responsible for Mossab as a source and as a human being. I felt that as his former handler, I cannot let him just meet his destiny without helping him. I started to think about all the legal implications of what I'm going to do. What will be the Shin Bet response for that? Am I allowed to do it? I knew that if I'll contact the Shin Bet and ask their permission, I'll get a no. And I didn't want to get this no. I felt that I really need to go and meet him. I thought that by exposing myself, I can be arrested and accused by the Shin Bet of treason. But I knew that this is what I need to do. And then I took off and I went to San Diego. This was a very tough flight. It was passing not only geographical borders. I needed to cross mental borders. And I was walking down in a long corridor. And in the end, I see Mossab standing. And I approached him, and we hugged and started to laugh. I don't know why laughing, but we were standing there laughing for 10 minutes. We were laughing, this was like breaking everything, all the borders, all the problems, everything.
The son of a Hamas founder sought sanctuary here in California.
But the federal government is now pushing for his deportation, claiming he poses a threat to the U.S.
Mossab told me, for some reason, They misread the book and they really think that I'm a terrorist and they think that I'm a threat to the United States.
Homeland Security will argue that he has provided material support to terrorist organizations in court tomorrow. They want him deported. We'll be live at the...
I got really mad. I thought to myself, it couldn't be. He helped us for more than 10 years. I called the Shin Bet. I asked them to give me instructions, and they didn't. They didn't respond. And I said, that's it. This is ridiculous.
How many times have you ever heard an agent of Shin Bet, the Israeli Secret Service, go public? This is a man who was Mossab Hassan's handler for many, many years, and he believes now it is his solemn moral duty to stand up, to go public, which is a risk to his own life, because he believes Mossab Hassan...
It's not just a reality show that you watch on TV and say, let's see what the judge is going to decide. Mossab is going to stay in the US and live, or Mossab is going to be deported to Jordan, and then who knows what will happen. Probably he will get killed somehow. I couldn't just sit aside and watch it.
We got a really big development in the story. The United States has now dropped its push to deport Mossab Hassan Youssef because of what lawyers called new evidence. Homeland Security previously called him a security threat because of his ties to the militant group Hamas. This man, Youssef, is the son of one of its founders. But after spending 10 years as a spy for Israel and converting to Christianity, he says deportation would mean certain death.
During a 15-minute hearing this morning, a U.S. Department of Homeland Security attorney announced that the government was dropping its objections, and an immigration judge ruled that pending a routine background check, Youssef can stay.
The Shin Bet had the ability to stop him. They didn't do it. When I look at it today, I say, maybe this is their way to tell me, okay, you can go on. Okay, we're not going to approve it, we don't like it, but we don't stop you. And this is our way to help Mossab. And today, I really believe this is what they did.
Maybe we're not family in the blood, but the bond between us is much stronger than the bond of brothers or family or blood. The bond between us is the bond of truth, and it's unbreakable. And he knows the truth. And he took a stand for the truth. Unlike many Shin Bet agents who worked with me side by side and saw how much we put effort to stop terrorist attacks. And all of them saw me, struggling, facing deportation, being disowned for the sake of the state that we fought for. And none of them came out to support. None of them.
This journey, for me as a person, as a human being, is always, and it is still, I think, the most important journey of my life. Not because of Mossab, not because of the Shin Bet, because of me, because during the time and along the way, I learned more about myself, about life, about friendship.
Gonen risked his life to save mine. And I hope that one day, people will be able to see the beauty of this man's heart. And I hope that our people in the region will learn from this experience how two people like Gonen and myself can come to a place where we can trust each other and work to be constructive and to build, and instead of destroy and spend our lives fighting. Gonen is a brother today, and I won't hesitate to sacrifice my life to save his, because he already did, and I owe him.